Back in the old days of this channel's inception, I attempted my first ever Fallout 3 video where I beat the game using only crafted weapons. Since that fateful day in 2020, I have gotten a steady supply of comments asking me to do the same thing in Fallout New Vegas, given its expanded options. So with that in mind, today's the day we finally find out, can you beat Fallout New Vegas with only crafted weapons? The number of weapons you can craft in New Vegas compared to Fallout 3 is quite substantial. Granted, most of them are one-time use grenades or mines, but still the options are there. Unlike 3, however, not all weapons need schematics, but rather some are unlocked after gaining certain perks, and a select few are accessible right from the get-go. There are a multitude of different ways that a person could tackle this challenge, so seeing other people attempt this would be quite interesting. Now, with all that out of the way, let's begin. I named myself Craftin' as I will be crafting a ton of objects. Hopefully you were able to figure that one out by yourself. For my special stats, I went with a focus on strength, endurance, and intelligence, with a few extra points in perception. The extra points in perception were for a few bonus points into the explosive skill. As I said, most of the crafted weapons are grenades this time around, so just doing that made the most sense. Strength and endurance, however, is for one weapon in particular, that being the dog tag fist. A very easy to craft unarmed weapon that only requires you to get 20 NCR dog tags to craft. Granted, you do need to take part in a very small unmarked side quest to get the schematics. The only reason I want them is because I can think of a few scenarios where throwing high explosive ordnance will not do me any favours, such as indoors or next to allied NPCs. Moving on, for my tag skills I go with explosives, repair and science. Explosives and repair because you need a certain amount of both stats to craft most of the better weapons. As for science, well, there's 2 specific skill checks I want to pass that I feel will help me out in the long run, but more on that later. Finally, for traits, I go with heavy-handed and skilled. I'll be negating the drawbacks of skilled upon my first level up, so the minus 10% overall XP will only be an issue for level 1. Finally out of the docks house, and I can head on down to the crafting bench to show you what I currently have to work with. To be blunt, while there are some decent options, especially the satchel charge, they all require multiple materials for what will be, once again, single-use weapons. Obviously, there is the option of going straight to Dead Money, grabbing a cosmic knife and some Abraxo cleaner, and then calling it a day. But that didn't exactly sound like it would be very fun, plus I don't feel like playing through the entirety of Dead Money right now. So other than the dog tag fist, I had my eyes set on one other crafted weapon, one that not only did decent damage, but would be incredibly simple to craft. I am in fact talking about the MFC grenade, or microfusion cell grenade. Just like the name implies, its only ingredient for crafting is microfusion cells. 3 in fact per grenade. And seeing how these cells are held in droves by factions like the Brotherhood, Van Graffs, and even some Fiends, along with being able to easily convert energy cells into more microfusion cells, well, I think you begin to see how I will never be in short supply of them. The only small hurdle that we have to jump is that to craft these weapons, you need the Mad Bomber perk, which requires 45 in both repair and explosives, as well as needing the player to be at least level 6. This means I will want to reach level 6 as fast as possible, and mostly without fighting back due to my currently 0 weapons. That's honestly not that hard, it basically just requires me to run to Vegas and back. I make a few pit stops along the way. Firstly, the abandoned shack outside Goodsprings just for some raw materials. Not sure how many of them will come in handy, but I'd rather be overprepared than underprepared. Sloan was next to fix up Snuffle's leg for some quick XP, along with marking the location on the map. I thought about fixing the generator as well, but opted to strip it for parts instead. I also marked Hidden Valley and grabbed the microfusion cells and holotape from the nearby Dead Brotherhood soldiers for help later. Passing through the Black Mountain shortcut is a little more treacherous this time around, as some of the mutants actually spot me. Thankfully, I am still able to disarm all of the bear traps for the safety of my legs and the pace of the run. While I could run through Freeside and reach Vegas that way, it occurred to me I wouldn't have the money to pass the credit check, and out of all the side quests I planned on doing, working as debt collector for the Garrets wasn't something I wanted to do right now. So, to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I just made my way towards Camp McCarran so that I could take the monorail and just bypass all of that nonsense. The second dead metaphorical bird in question is that I'm able to pickpocket a few NCR dog tags while I'm here to prepare for when I get the dog tag fist schematic later. I don't have a disguise, but I do have speed, so I can just dodge the NCR's gunfire and arrive safely in Vegas. Many of you probably already know why I'm here. If you enter the tops and stare at Benny, the game will complete the They Went That Away quest and reward you with 1000 XP. Or in my case, 900. This puts me right on the cusp of reaching level 4, so for my first 2 levels I just put all my points into repair, explosives and science, then as mentioned before I take the Swift Learner perk to help speed things along. Now that my science skill is at 60, I can pass the first check that I talked about when I chose it as a tag skill. This requires me to fast travel back to Hidden Valley so I can, you guessed it, scale the back of Black Mountain, then fix up Rhonda to complete the crazy quest the pacifist way. Now at level 5.5, I am so close to our goal of 6, and fortunately, I still had one more quest in mind. First off, thanks to playing it like it's Fallout 4 and grabbing everything that isn't nailed down, I was able to get just enough materials to craft a single satchel charge. This will allow me to quickly complete the first portion of the GI Blues quest for the king, as rather than hire Oris, I can just slip this bad boy into his pants and deal with him discreetly. The rest of the quest from here is just jogging to and from the king's clubhouse to the followers and finally the NCR before striking up a truce, finishing the quest, and finally reaching level 6, I mean 7, allowing me to grab the Mad Bomber perk and see about crafting some MFC grenades. I have some microfusion cells already, but you know what they say, the more the merrier, so I went and procured some from the Van Graff's toilets. When all said and done, I returned to Goodsprings and used all the cells I've collected and managed to craft 72 MFC grenades. They currently do 67 damage per grenade, which I know is pretty low for an explosive, but honestly, I don't even care. They more than make up for it with how easy they are to craft and the sheer amount that I have. Naturally, I put them to the test in the defense of Goodsprings. I have truly embraced the Mad Bomber persona and become everyone's favourite fictional character. Fat Man from Metal Gear Solid 2.
It's time to start the party!
All I am truly missing is the roller skates. Enough about my mad love for Metal Gear, at least for now. It's time to get as much out of these grenades as possible, so for no discernible reason, I walk down to Prim and blow up the Bison Steve Hotel. It is around here where I began using VATS as much as possible with the grenades. Simply because when used in VATS, no matter what, they always had a surprisingly high chance of hitting their target, plus when they hit the ground, they would more often than not just stick in place. Whereas when they were thrown normally, it seemed almost random how far or in which direction they would decide to bounce in once they hit the ground, making it just a little bit too inconsistent. Once the final convict has been converted into wallpaper for the hotel, I do the only logical thing and upgrade Prim Slim. He literally has the town as part of his name, by right he should be in charge. This also caused me to reach level 8, and for the next 3 perk levels, I took Demolitions Expert for a 20% increase in explosive damage every 2 levels. From here I may have gone a tad overboard by using just about every last one of my new grenades on leftover convicts, vipers, a small family of rat scorpions who were frankly hurting nobody, and some ants because the man with the funny mustache told me to. Well, the only logical place to get more in my eyes was the Brotherhood bunker, so after dropping a boom boom in Dobson's pantaloons, I got to raiding the Brotherhood's personal storage containers of all the MFCs I can find. Even though the Brotherhood has a nearby workbench that I can use, I still just travel back to Goodsprings, for some reason, and craft 80 more grenades. By this point, I'd been goofing around for long enough, and with more than enough grenades to cause quite the entrance, I strolled right into the tops. Turns out though, they are classified as holdout weapons, so what was originally going to be an impressive display of explosive ordnance ends up being another one-pant wonder as Benny immediately drops his guard around the man who he thought was dead as he skulks around behind him. Naturally, his lower body explodes, and now it's time for me to go and help out the NCR. Literally, the only reason I decided to help them today is that I had already helped out the Kings, so I can quickly complete their second quest by just calling in my favour from Not Elvis. On the topic of doing quests out of order to save on time, after getting my assignment to enlist more explosive fanatics to the NCR, I paid the Lucky 38 a visit, and for whatever reason, Mr. House's guards just had zero regards for his safety today, and basically let me walk on through to the control room without any issues. The funny little egg of Houses isn't enough to stop one of my grenades, especially when I'm able to trick shot it in behind him and blow him up from the rear. Kind of like I've done to most people so far. Next up should be the boomers, but I decided that now would be the time I finally got the schematics for the dog tag fists. Truth be told, the schematics are pretty close by to the sunken bomber the boomers are going to send me to, so on the surface it may have made more sense to wait until they sent me to Lake Mead, and from there make my way over to Camp Guardian and grab it then. Thing is though, you may recall how I talked about wanting the dog tag fist for close quarters encounters, primarily those indoors. Well, nowhere would that be more required than taking out the gunpowder infused ants inside the boomer's armory. Funny enough, throwing a grenade in there will more than likely lead to my death on more than one occasion. The majority of the journey to Camp Guardian was about as by the numbers as you can get for a New Vegas playthrough. I marked locations on the map, stopped into a few buildings and traders to buy some more microfusion cells, and the game decided to randomly crash without any prior warning. Now, to be fair, this is the first time my New Vegas has crashed in about 2, maybe 3 months, so we can let it slide for now. The Lake Lurks were surprisingly easy to take down. Well, in VATS anyway. Having the grenades stop on a dime at their feet always led to a quick death. Trying to throw them manually on this uneven terrain, however, led to more than a few wasted grenades. The caves we need to head to are at the top of this mountain path. Returning viewers will remember this is the place where I fell asleep in real life during the Jason playthrough. This time things are not as relaxed, as I have to blow up many a rat scorpion and rat during the climb. They aren't dangerous by any means. I'm honestly more worried of blowing myself up, as until I get the hit the deck perk, I am still very much at risk of doing so. When I make it to the top and enter the cave, I'll be honest, I was expecting to fight a bunch of lake lurks, as I remember the place being filled with them. And yes, while that is still the case, there wasn't a single one between me and Private Halford, who is the trooper currently in possession of the schematics. You don't even need to clear out the cave to get them, you just tell him to run to the exit and he hands them over. Naturally, we leave just as quickly and can get to work gathering the last few materials. As I said before, all it requires is 20 NCR dog tags, which fortunately only takes about 5 minutes to get, as I've been increasing my sneak skill for this very moment. Plus, I've already visited locations such as Prim, Mojave Outpost, and Camp McCarran, so there is no shortage of necklaces for me to steal. This was where I noticed, I think for the first time ever, that seemingly not every NCR soldier carries dog tags on them. I'm sure that's not a big revelation to most people, it's literally just something I hadn't noticed before. Once I have all 20, I craft the knuckles and immediately question why I needed 20 of them if I'm only going to have 6, 3 for each hand. With the dog tags in hand, literally, I make my way for Nellis to safely help out the boomers. George still gets what's coming to him on the way, goodness knows how many people he's sent to their death by convincing him to run towards the boomers' artillery, so for the sake of irony, we blow him up too. This may be one of my fastest completion times for getting the boomers' aid. I already have the repair skill high enough to fix up the panels for Loyal, listening to Pete's speech never takes very long, plus I'm able to pass most of his optional speech checks for more quick reputation points, and as mentioned, now that I have the dog tag fists, I am easily able to pummel the ants for Raquel without the fear of my limbs detaching from my body. The fists are pretty good by the way, they only do 29 damage per punch right now, but I plan to upgrade my unarmed skill enough to grab the piercing strike perk before the end of the game, which should make them pretty effective killing machines. The most important part of all of this though, is the 2 mini nukes I grabbed from the armory. With a few extra materials, I can turn these into fat mines, which I have one very specific use for in mind. But that can wait, for now it's time to raise the bomber, and because I've already marked it on the map, I am there and back again in no time at all, and just like that I'm reporting my success story to the ambassador, as well as informing him of the healing relations between the NCR and the Kings. While some of you are probably getting the idea this is going to be one of those runs where I do all of the NCR's quests to their fullest, let me nip that in the bud right now, because let's be real, there was no way I wasn't going to go into Gomorrah with all of these grenades and not leave the place a smouldering pile of bodies and rubble. Do you ever have that moment in a game where you need to find one specific item? An item that you always seem to find in droves, but the moment you actually want it, they seem to have just vanished off the face of the earth? Well, that was me at this very moment as I hunted around the Mojave for sensor modules, as they were the last component I needed to make those 2 fat mines. I checked around every shop I could think of and not one vendor was selling them. I even looked around multiple previously visited areas and found nothing. After about 30 minutes of searching, I finally had the idea to check out Cerulean Robotics. That's the place that they imprisoned Fisto. After putting the knuckles to work once more to deal with the vermin, I was ecstatic to see that there were indeed sensor modules to grab. Quite a few in fact. While I only needed 2, I figured it couldn't hurt to grab more anyway. After all, I could use them to craft even more mines, or even some auto-inject stim packs if I'm feeling lazy. By this point, I'm fairly close to level 13 and reaching my goal of achieving 100 in science to pass that second check I mentioned at the start of the run. Considering where I am with the plot, my next mission was to meet up with the Colonel at Hoover Dam and deal with the cans. So what better way to tie all that together than by making my way for the dam, and in the process of doing so, stop off at Boulder City and demonstrate to Jessup that not only was I strong enough to survive a shot to the head, but thanks to the hit the deck perk, I can now laugh in the face of all explosions, even my own. Especially my own. As expected, once the cans were dead and prisoners freed, I leveled up, got my science skill to max, and then went back to the Repcon headquarters to hack through this very hard terminal. Doing this allows me into the room with the Q35 matter modulator, and yes, while that is a pretty good weapon, it's not why I'm here. No, instead I'm here for the abundance of microfusion cells sitting in the back of the room. This may not have been worth the investment of points, but honestly, I'll take this over waiting in-game weeks on end for the Van Graffs to maybe stock enough to satisfy me. Turning them all into MFC grenades now gives me a total of 135. I think I am more than ready to tackle the last 2 factions now for the NCR. In fact, I was feeling so confident that instead of taking the baby route to the cans by heading west from Freeside, I instead just began walking north from Good Springs right through the Cazador infestation. Just like with most other creatures in this run, using VATS to alter the fabric of reality and allowing my grenades to stick in place when thrown allows me to inflict some pretty serious damage on the Cazadors, especially since they all tend to grip together. The grenades also tend to cripple them if they don't outright kill them, so that makes hitting them with any follow-up grenades even easier. The nearby Vipers were about just as simple. Their leader also liked to use grenades and knuckle dusters, so I made sure to prove myself the better combatant by not only murdering her in cold blood, but by getting an achievement in the process. It really goes to show how little I used explosive weapons before today. It all went very well here, right up until a random Deathclaw, probably attracted by the multiple gunshots and explosions, ran straight for me and killed me within seconds. My plan was to hope I'd cripple him with the grenades. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and as a result, I found myself on the end of a very aggressive hug. Attempt number 2, and I used my powers of foresight to anticipate the Deathclaw's arrival, but rather than do something smart or brave and put down one of those fat mines, I instead just let him tear the raiders to pieces. Why not? Saves me some grenades. Granted, any grenades I would have used on the Vipers I immediately tossed at some nearby bighorners, so it doesn't really matter. Arriving at Red Rock, and my initial plan was to put Regis in charge by way of political assassination, after convincing the Colonel it was the best course of action. Unfortunately, for some reason, I never got the dialogue to tell the Colonel that this was an option, and as such I returned to the Great Khans and treated them how I did everyone else. Now that I actually have the hit the deck perk, the whole not wanting to use grenades indoors thing is completely out the window, as it's just a much faster alternative than running around and punching everyone. The rest of them outside don't fare any better, as I make ample use of the VATS accuracy yet again. Once the last of the cans has been turned into giblets, I proceed to the Hidden Valley bunker in an attempt to repeat the process there. I'll go over the initial plan rather quickly, as it backfired almost immediately. The Brotherhood are obviously pretty tanky due to their power armor, so rather than try and take them on head on, I was going to try and reverse pickpocket grenades into them for instant kills. Well, this plan can only get you so far, as it turns out most of the members of the Brotherhood are in close proximity to others, meaning the initial blast will kill whoever's pocket it goes in, but anyone caught in the radius would immediately become hostile. Knowing this was the case, I used my one-pant explosion on one of the Elder's guards. The reason I decided on this one was so I could funnel the second guard, the Elder, and potentially harden down this narrow corridor and just keep throwing grenades at them from around the corner until they were dead. This actually worked very well, which leaves only a few recon-wearing knights and some scribes in the bottom floor. I can continue to throw grenades to great effect here, of course, but due to these Brotherhood personnel being lightly armoured, I can also switch to my dog-tag fists and see results there as well. The silver lining to this is that I'm still going to come out of all this with a net positive on grenades, because every member of the Brotherhood drops some form of energy ammo, which can be converted into microfusion cells, and from there, more grenades. So yeah, what was originally going to be very simple due to stealth briefly became concerning when that didn't work, to then ultimately becoming a complete nightmare for the Brotherhood once I realised I essentially had infinite grenades while I was down here. So long as I played it safe and threw grenades around corners and never got myself trapped, they couldn't even really approach me. I certainly feel great after that shockingly enjoyable and easy fight, and with the Brotherhood out of the way, also yes, I blew up the base once they were all dead for good measure, because why not, all that was left was to defend the President, and then move on to the final quest. I make sure that I'm granted full access to the dam and that I'm allowed to use my weapons, so once the President arrives I can head up to the Vertibird and use my explosive skill to find and disarm the bomb, and then from there I put the dog-tag fist to use to take out the nearby Legion sniper before he can take out the President. Kimball is saved, meaning all that remains is the defense of the dam. At this stage, I was able to at last get my hands on the Piercing Strike perk, so rather than blow up all of my NCR buddies, I can instead use the dog-tag fists to carve a path through the Legion, and honestly, I feel like the footage on screen speaks for itself. Unlucky for them, while their light armor allows them to move pretty fast, its lower protection also means that the Piercing Strike perk basically allows me to ignore all of it and just punch right through them to their squishier bits. When I actually get to the Legate's camp though, I switch back to my grenades to deal with the Praetorians. Sure, I definitely could still take them in a fist fight, but their ballistic fists could mess me up pretty damn fast. Now, finally, was the moment I had been waiting a long time for, the confrontation with the Legate. Before I entered his dialogue range, I made sure to set both of the fat mines down on the path that he was going to follow. I also had to remember that it was a flat piece of ground, as they will roll if placed on uneven terrain. Considering how this is going to turn out, this is one of those times where I will just show the battle with the Legate uninterrupted.
And who are you to...
Yeah, unsurprisingly, 2 fat mines powered up by 3 ranks in the Demolitions Expert perk and an explosive skill of 100 absolutely ruined the Legate's day. And like clockwork, since I took him out before he had a chance to do his mid-fight retreat, he doesn't get to summon reinforcements, meaning the only other Legion soldiers I have to worry about are these 2 Praetorians, which, much like the rest of them, get taken out with a few wildly thrown grenades. After diving on my last grenade to kill the final one, I approach the gate, speak with General Oliver, finishing the game and proving yes, you can indeed beat Fallout New Vegas with only crafted weapons. That was a lot of fun. Like I said at the beginning, there are so many different ways you can approach this challenge that most people would definitely have different strategies about how they would build their character and what weapons they would craft. For example, you could go to Lonesome Road and if you were able to defeat Roar, could craft the unique Deathclaw gauntlet from her remains if you were so determined.
Regardless, that's going to be the this challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like. If you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe to our these videos every week. My name's Nerbit, stay safe and I'll see y'all in the next video.